Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Chris Rosini, our co host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. We have a couple things to talk about today. My son, Rand Paul, he's a senator. I think most people know that. And he got a little attention this week, and he was making an effort to show the people that we ought to cut spending. And it was a gallant, effort. But guess what? They're going to continue spending. And in the meantime, we still have to look at the marketplaces and talk a little bit about gold. And gold has been soaring at record highs. And that's not good if you're thinking about, are we improving things? But if you have protected yourself, at least you have some reassurance that you have some protection, because we have to assume this government is not going to take Rand's advice. They're going to continue to spend, deficit run up, and they're exploding now. They're actually getting worse. And the world seems to, accept it. That's the bewildering thing, because the financial markets, generally speaking, people who own regular stocks, they're happy, and everybody thinks that it'll last forever. The dollar looks better than it really is, but it's getting weaker all the time, because if you measure the dollar value by gold prices, it's lost a lot of steam. And those are dangerous times, and that's one of the reasons that we partnership with Birch Gold, because Birch Gold calls emphasis to this and suggests, and they have a plan for this, is to get out of the regular stocks, which is sky high and in a big bubble. And one day, even gold is hard to believe that it's going to go up a lot more at $2,600. Even I, who've been the pessimist about the dollar, it still is astounding. It's hard to adjust, but it's not over. If you think if people think it's, well, I'm too late, I should have done it a year or two or three ago. But guess what? It's not over until it's over. And they are not going to follow Rand's advice and the advice of Thomas Massey and others, because they're just going to spend, because it's addiction, it's political, it's power, it's warmongering. There are so many pressures on there. It's amazing that superficially things look rather calm. So Birch has been involved in this for a good many years, and we have talked along with and emphasized what Birch offers, and that what they're interested in getting people to think seriously about getting out of the regular stock market and put it into a gold investment retirement account, an IRA, a gold investment account. And that's available. It wasn't always available. It's just become more popular, and sometimes it can be complicated technically. How do you sell stocks and pay on all this? But they haven't worked out where you can shift and move along, and it looks like to me that the cost to do that is either absent or minimal. I know it's they make it easier, but the point is, if you're interested in doing that, if you haven't done it or want to double check everything, you can get in touch with Birch Gold. And the easiest way to do it, if you're a viewer of this program, is to text Ron 989898, and that'll connect you to somebody at Birch Gold, and they will send you more material that you can go over and explain exactly how this can come about. So once again, if you're interested in this and thinking about putting more assets into a gold investment retirement account, text Ron 989898, and you can receive this free material. And Chris, I think that in the meantime, we'll keep it plugging. We'll keep encouraging Rand and his few friends he has that there is a solution. The solution is, the one thing for sure, it's not complicated. Just cut spending. And Rand addresses this in a unique manner. A few years ago, he said, if you cut a penny from everything you did in Washington, after a couple of years, you could balance the budget. It sounds like, no, you can't do that. But one thing has happened since he first started talking about this, you have to cut it more. Now you'd have to cut a whole 6 cents from all the spending that we have. 6 cents doesn't sound like much, but I tell you what, in Washington, that is something they can't understand, and there's the large majority believe you can't ever cut. And it is a political addiction because the special interests are so powerful that they complain about even a token cut. And this is the reason that we have to keep at it. We have to define what the government should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And believe me, they're way overboard. And we have to, offer every bit of effort to cut back. And some of these proposals that I made over the years and many are making now in Washington, why do you do it? Why do you say anything that will bring to attention the danger of what's happening now? If you look at the danger of the foreign policy, the more monetary policy, the deficit's going up, and looking, how are they going to take care of a $35 trillion debt? And this is something they don't have control. One thing is they create money to pay the debt, but what they can't measure and what has now started to show some real changes, and that is how fast do the people spend money. So if I get paid $100 in a morning for something, and I say, oh, what I want is going to go up in price, so I better spend it right away. So they call that velocity of money. That might not be the best term, but it is. It's the speed that the money turns over. So if you turn it over twice as fast as you did before, that essentially is equal to increasing the money supply. It's something you don't think about, and they don't really talk about it, but it still has the psychological effect, and that's when people start selling and shifting around, and we get to those points. We've seen those already. I think that's happening in the stock market. People, oh, we got some money, we got to buy stocks, they're going up. It's a bubble phenomenon, and Chris, the bubble can't last. The bubbles have a limited time span. They eventually just disintegrate or they burst big, but they can last a long time. And unfortunately, the most innocent people who are the ones that suffer the most, and that is the middle class and the poor. They get dealt on with the inflation tax, which people don't want to think of as a tax. And that is when all the prices go up. Mm-hmm. And they do complain about that. But unfortunately, the majority of people think that, so that's no big deal. The solution is get the government, just give me more money so I can afford to buy this stuff. That's crazy talk is what it is, but it's common and politicians get away with it. It's in the presidential debates. And I'm not overly confident that our next president is going to solve all these problems, but I do know that there's going to be a higher pressure just to spend more because politically and philosophically, the left doesn't believe that we should cut. We should spend more. And it's the government that solves problem. And I think we know, and our viewers know, that it's the government that has caused our problems.
You nailed it, Dr. Paul. Yes, the left especially. They believe that it's good that the government spends more, and it's bad when they spend less, which is never. And we can't let Republicans off because they're a part of this entire process too. It is an addiction to spending. It's in the government, but it's also in our society with the people, with corporations, businesses, debts that can't be paid. And as you say, this cannot last forever. I think people just bet that it'll last through their lifetimes, and they're speculating. It's a gamble. And that's why we recommend looking at real assets, gold, because if it doesn't last through our lifetimes, somebody's going to have to hold the bag at the top. It may be us, and Senator Paul, like yourself, this isn't just, he offers a sensible solution, and on record, it shows that government does not want a sensible solution. They want to keep going full steam ahead. And they'll do it until there is no choice at the end. And people will have to accept cuts because there will be no other option. I know people think, oh, that's impossible. No, it's not impossible. History has proven this over and over. Uh, and this is how people act otherwise. Look at the COVID stuff. They kept going. And when people started taking the masks off, others were so mad. How dare you take those masks off? How dare you stop getting the vaccines? But look, we don't wear the masks. Nobody gets those vaccines anymore. So it happens when it happens. And that's just how it is. That's human nature. Unfortunately, when it happens, the longer it takes, the worse it's going to be.
Very good. And, there's so much history behind this problem. It's happened for a long time. And you can all go back to Roman times and you'll find out that they had bread and circuses. They had too much domestic spending, too much foreign policy spending. They had the bubbles and it comes down eventually. And right now we're well on our way and things move more rapidly now than they did back in the ancient times. But the Democrats definitely see this problem as different than the Republicans. I often criticize the bipartisanship because, like, when it comes to solving the problems, if you're realistic, the Republicans aren't going to solve this problem. But if you looked at at least the proposals in the campaign, the Democrats call this problem a tax problem. There aren't a lot of tough taxes, and you have to tax people who seem to be rich. And so they want to put the taxes on the rich and pass it out to the poor. And what they do is it seems like the rich get richer, and the debt is passed on to the poor through these higher prices. And the spending is never cut because they justify not spending it. So for many, for Republicans especially, they give a lot of lip service to it by cutting the spending, but they don't really achieve a whole lot. And yet I think there's a stronger movement since Rand has started his effort to try to get people's attention by these little tricks he want to play on them. This last vote was his best vote. He had 39 senators vote with him on this, which used to be 2, 3, 4, 5 people like that. So yes, you have to. It's a long-term battle, and people have to know it. Even if it's just for the rebuilding, which I believe that is the way that things will happen. This thing will come unglued and it has to be rebuilding. Then we have to blame the right people and the right philosophy. And I think the philosophy of authoritarianism, assuming that individuals aren't smart enough or ambitious enough or conscious enough or moral enough to assume responsibility for themselves and their family. So they assume, well, they're not ever going to take care of themselves. It's us. It is we who are so smart, the authoritarians. That's why they have to get there and tell them. And I've had members of Congress tell me, we have to help them. I agree with you, Rhonda. We should watch all this spending and all. But the people are too dumb. And that's the way they talk. That's what they really believe, that they have a moral obligation, almost like a religious obligation, to make sure that wealth is distributed fairly and solve all the problems. And they're nothing more than stooges for passing the money out to the people who are already rich and are already promoting the wars and the welfare state. So it's trying to bring about a true understanding of what's going on that makes all the difference in the world. And I think that's where we're making progress. But if you measure everything in Washington and even in these campaigns that have gone nuts, you would say, well, it's hopeless. And I don't think that's the case. We just need some more common sense out there and we could make some progress.
Absolutely, Dr. Paul. Yeah, this week was it would be embarrassing. The government should be embarrassed, but they're not. And we saw one day, 8 billion, another 8 billion after 200 billion has gone to Ukraine. Here goes another 8 billion. And then the next day, 8.7 billion to Israel. I mean, who else wants our money? Anybody else? It's absurd what is going on. And where does the US taxpayer fit into this? We're not even an afterthought. our money is just taxed away from us and sent to Ukraine, to Israel for wars. Our money is literally going up in smoke, so that's what we're working for. We're not working for, I believe in very limited government, Dr. Paul too, extremely limited government, almost to where you don't even know they're there. But I accept that we live in a society. Other people don't believe this. They want government to take money from us for XYZ. Fine. But if you're going to do that, can you at least do something beneficial for here, for the United States? Nothing gets improved here. Everything just gets shipped off around the world for endless loser wars. It's terrible for us, and we're told that this is freedom. I mean, they've got us wrapped around their fingers, and they're just 8 billion here, 8.7. Just the days go by, and our lifestyle is declining rapidly. So, it was slowly at first. Now it's rapid. So things have to change. We have to really start thinking about improving our country instead of this massive delusion of trying to run the world.
There's a simple rule that I've worked hard at trying to follow and spread the message. And that has to do with understanding the moral issue of what we do. Because if you or I, Chris, if we decided we wanted something and our neighbors had more than we had, and we go in and demand it and take it from them with the use of force. And that's basically, that still happens way too much. But most people say, well, no, that's dishonest. You can't do that. Just because they have more than you have, you're not allowed to do that. But they have no qualms about saying, what we'll do is send our congressman. Boy, the congressman is powerful. He might deny services and whatnot, and he's just trying to iron out the unfairness of a free market and the inequality that exists. So they go along and think, well, we'll do it that way, and they depend on them to do that. But I'll tell you what, it's a moral issue. If you and I can't do it, Chris, and take what we want just willy-nilly, why is it that we allow the government to do it? Why shouldn't the government have to follow the same rules? And if you can't, but most government, if you get really old-fashioned and say, well, how would you guide what to let them do? Well, look at the Constitution and see if they have explicit authority for you to have such a program. Can you go to war without a declaration under the Constitution? No, you can't do that. Can you have a welfare state that benefits the loudest and the most aggressive politicians and lobbyists to go to Washington and build up coalition? Should we prove that we can get enough coalition of lobbyists together to get 51% and say our God is the pure democracy, the dictatorship of the majority? They work on that a lot. As soon as you get that vote, but you can't do that. That's what's happened. The dictatorship of the majority. Who benefits? Who hurts the most? It's the minority. The people who are pretending they care about the minority and run these programs, and then they go out and do exactly the opposite, and they end up the poorest and the loss of liberty the most, and all the problems they suffer from. And they seem to have no qualms about it, and they don't recognize that we have a guideline, and it's the absence of a moral standard by individuals. It's the absence of respect for the Constitution. It's an absence for the respect of sound education. And we've delivered that, of course, over to the government. And now we essentially have given the control of medicine over to the government. And the quality is going down in all these areas. So people need to have more confidence that a free society is not something that endangers us. It's the opposite that puts us into so much danger. And there's an answer to that, and that is the understanding and the promotion of personal liberty. Chris?
Fantastic, Dr. Paul. I'll finish up with my closing thoughts. Yes, what needs to be in our future and will be in our future, I'm sure someday, whether or not I'll be alive to see it, I don't know, is to go backwards to the best style of government, and that is local government. That doesn't mean everybody's an angel in local government, but that is where people have the most influence. So if my local government was to tax all of us here and send the money to other towns, like our federal government does, sending it to Ukraine and Israel, I just have to go a few streets to City Hall, to voice my concerns, and my neighbors would do the same. um, that's where you have the most influence. My mayor goes to my gym. Sometimes I see him there. So if my mayor wants to rip us off, he's going to have to stare us in the face as he does it. That keeps a check on the mayor ripping us off. And they still do rip us off, but only what they can get away with. Now, take it to the state level. Let's say you live in Florida and you're taxed to death and your money is getting shipped to California to go subsidize the way that they live out there. Now it's a little bit harder. Florida's a bigger state. Your influence is a lot less than what you can have in your town. And now when you take it to the big one, the US federal government, our influence drops to virtually zero. Votes, forget about votes. We have virtually zero influence on them taking $8 billion this week and another $8 billion and shipping it off to Ukraine and Israel. And we have nothing to do. There's nothing we can do about it. So this is the way we have to go back. It's a decentralization of power. That's how our country originally started. And then they changed it, over time, slowly enough to where people thought this is normal. Well, this is the abnormal state that we live in today. And we have to go back to sound local government once again.
Very good. You know, people who listen to what we talk about and talked about today about, minimizing government, they get all worked up because they see, oh, you have to have government. Otherwise, there's going to be chaos in the streets. There'll be chaos all over. There'll be inflation and all these different things. And yet the opposite is the case, that what we have now is a result of way too much government. And you say, well, how will people govern themselves? Well, this is why, first off, people have to have some moral standards. Most of them do, but there are times when they are totally refuted or avoided. And so they say, well, we have to have the government take care of us, and they're convinced that you have to have the government. But I think that so often the chaos that people see should wake them up and say, why not? If you take what happened in COVID. I mean, did this government help us on that? And they violated our civil liberties. They weren't on the right track scientifically. And it's endless on how often it fails. But how do you guide it? What kind of rules do you have? Well, throughout all of history, it's been an understanding, not written and dominated by tyrants, but it's called the natural law, because it seems like no matter how bad system has been for the various decades or millennia, there's always the people who say, the country and the world is better off if you have an understanding of what natural law is about. Like, don't kill, steal, rob, and that does sound very good. A set of rules endorsed for all this time. So instead of having more chaos, you have less chaos. The chaos comes by tyrants telling you, you can't have this, you can't do this. Everything is, you have to have prior restraint. The government has to check what you're going to say, do, print, what medicine you're going to take. And the regulators, how could they do that? Because the Congress, we could go to the Congress. But what does the Congress do? They defer to the executive branch and then to the lobbyists, and the executive branch have regulators. They write rules. There's laws that have. And people, thousands and thousands of laws and thousands of pages, and it's all unconstitutional, and it's all harmful because you say, well, no, I'll point out this. We had this regulation and it worked. Yeah, but maybe it would have worked better without the government involvement. They always assume that it'd be much worse. Well, what if you didn't have any fraud in the monetary system? And, since August 15th, 1971, it's been said that you can't have any definition of what the monetary system is all about. The unit of account, what is a dollar? Nobody knows what a dollar is. A piece of paper that is always losing value and it's eventually will get to the point that, like in Germany and Zimbabwe, it's just paper, and it's not worth the ink that's on it. So this whole argument that the government is serving our interests is a bunch of baloney, and we shouldn't believe it, and we should not take for granted how we're preached to throughout our lives by our government schools. That doesn't mean that everything you ever learn in government school is wrong, but I tell you what, it's pretty hard to compete with the government schools, say, on economic policy. How do we compete with them on war, going to war? It's a patriotic thing to go to war when somebody up in Washington wants to go to war. And yet right now we see some cracks in that. Some people are starting to resist. They're starting to recognize, how did we ever get in war, in this war in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and Vietnam, and Korea, and all these places, illegally, unconstitutionally, immorally? That's how we got involved. So the people have to wake up. The people stopped the Vietnam War eventually. They eventually put brakes on COVID. So the people, a prevailing attitude by the people has to be expressed in order to stop this nonsense. And there's a lot more activity there than we realize. So in that area, I'm an optimist, because I think the use of the internet and the people that I meet and talk to are very much in favor of a free society, one where the individual is responsible for what they do and to take care of their family and their education, and not listening to the woke people. The wokeism is a monster. It's actually a religion, because when it comes to ordinary religion, they're mostly atheists. They don't believe in. They're usually associated with, don't be restrained by this silly Christian religion, and there's an attack on that. So I think there are a lot of good things happening, but people have to contribute. Everybody has to, do their best to understand all these issues, because the word of mouth is the best way for this message to spread. I think the message is spreading, so all I say is keep it going. Okay, I want to thank everybody today for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.